greetings to our friends from the Cuban mission to the United Nations. Our being here tonight and in Brooklyn for the first time in a while is a real tradition with nearly unbroken continuity in New York City since even before the triumph of the revolution in 1959, when supporters of the July 26th movement raised funds for arms and propaganda and even hosted and toured Fidel in Manhattan. What we are celebrating is the initiation of the armed struggle against a neo-colonial military dictatorship dominated by U.S. capital in land and industry. The subsequent formation of the July 26th movement emerging as the inspiration and leadership of what became a truly mass, island-wide revolutionary uprising and struggle that became the Cuban Socialist Revolution. But we will also strongly emphasize tonight that our celebration this year comes at a very sober time, as the consequences of the U.S. anti-Cuba economic war is mounting to harsh and sharp effect. Hunger is looming in Cuba today. People are dying for lack of medicines and life-saving equipment, and over 500,000 Cubans have emigrated in material and emotional stress, disproportionately among trained and highly educated professionals, including doctors, that is exacerbating the health crisis. Now more than ever is the time for broad unity to fight the U.S. war on Cuba, whatever differences we have on whatever other questions. And we have always counted on Cuba, as we're going to see tonight in all the presentations, to show solidarity for our struggles, and now we must do the same. And we are now calling in calling us all for renewed struggle. I want to, in this spirit, call on everyone to rise in loving tribute to the sadly numerous past year, sisters and brothers who have passed and joined the ancestors, as the profound saying goes. All were strongly identified with revolutionary Cuba in their hearts and brains, in words and deeds, and most importantly in action, year after year, decade after decade. I list the comrades in alphabetical order and request a presente after each comrade's name amid silent respect. Sister Joan Gibbs.
Presente.
Brother Marty Goodman.
Presente.
Sister Merle Ratner.
Presente.
Brother Ralph Pointer.
Presente.
Sister Viola Plummer.
Presente.
Thank you. Now let me warmly welcome Deacon Brown, I believe it is, I hope I got that right, from the church, and our dear sister Colette Peen from the December 12th movement, who will welcome us to glorious Brooklyn and introduce this evening's culture.
Thank you. So indeed, please, Deacon Brown, please come say some words of we thank you as always.
Words are going to be short. We're going to start with just two words: peace and blessings. And that's to everyone. The gentleman talked about the first time in Brooklyn. And thanks be to the December 12th movement, they steered you to the greatest church in Brooklyn. We have been in contact and working with the December 12th movement for well, I forget the number, but if we add it up, it was about 3 years before the pandemic, and then after the pandemic, and we're still going. You know, we are, you know, these brothers and sisters, you know, are very, very vital to the community. You know, and it's just not about being black. You know, it's everyone who is oppressed. You know, and here at New Canaan, we are not just a church that's in the community. We try to be a church that is part of the community.
That's right.
You know, I often tell people that for a lot of people, the only Bible that they ever will read is you. You know, so I'm not trying to put December 12th up there with Jesus. I'm not doing that. But if you look at their works, you know, and you look at their gospel, you know, the gospel only means the truth. And when you look at their truth and what they stand for, here in New Canaan, we have zero problems with working with December 12th. So we welcome you all here, and we thank God that you have come here. And I'd be remiss if I don't say we have Sunday morning service at 11 o'clock. For those who want to hear more and do more. But today we're not here for that. You know, we're here, you know, to recognize the struggle and what we're going to do to alleviate the struggle. So again, I think I probably said too much, but just welcome you all.
And we want to indeed take a moment to revitalize, to refresh, to reground ourselves in the struggle of support, in the struggle of learning by the example of the Cuban Revolution, but also of sharing the ongoing support from us to Cuba, from Cuba to the many peoples of the world. And part of that, this particular day, is we wanted to highlight some of the newer people who have come into the struggle, to highlight it, to promote it, and to keep it going, because that is how continuity. So I want to introduce you to the two MCs, Vincent Verdry and Sister Khadija Munaj. Khadija.
Hi, hello everyone. Thank you so much for coming out to Bed-Stuy. It's a really historic neighborhood. I'm so happy that everyone could come and celebrate here with us tonight. For this wonderful program, we're going to have a short documentary. Sorry, I don't have the name in front of me right now, but we're going to show us Cuba in Africa.
Africa calls.
Africa calls, Cuba answers. We're going to show a short documentary around that, and we are going to have a few words from the amazing and wonderful comrade from Cuba, Yuri, dignitary, to join us.
Yes, and before the film, we're going to have a play from the December 12th movement, just make some remarks.
Yes.
And then he will show you.
So, just to frame, Christian, you know what's so funny. Just to frame the film, it's a amateur trying to capture a tremendous experience. And it was my first time to Cuba. It was for a Malcolm X conference. It was called Malcolm X Speaks into the 90s. And we were in Cuba from May 19th, 1990 to May 25th, from Malcolm's birthday to African Liberation Day. And the highlight of it, we had a chance to meet President Fidel Castro. And I'll just make this point. He went over in detail the Battle of Quito Carnival. And for brothers and sisters who will understand the importance of the victory of that battle to the liberation of Africa, he knew it in its minutiae. And he said to me, which I never have forgotten, that Cuba put everything on the line to win that battle in Angola, to the degree an imperialism move, it might have even undermined the Cuban Revolution. But that was their solidarity. So forgive me for whatever shortcomings it has. It is a filmmaker who is an amateur. And I don't know whether you think I'm any better with it. But you'll see Kwame Ture, you'll see Asada Shakur, and you'll see. And Ilombe and stuff. So, there we go. So, straight in. I was an amateur. I still am.
This humility is killing
I was humble. No, I've gotten better. At Yuri, I've gotten much better. Much better. Just a couple of things. One, I wanted to make sure to give honor to our comrades in Cuba C, our comrade Rosemary Neely, our sister Joan Gibbs. Last June, and when I was Chief of Staff for City Council Member Charles Barron, and let me tell you about this comrade, the ambassador, Yuri. He came to City Hall to meet. You know how you can meet in City Hall forever and stuff. We wanted to get the resolution passed by the New York City Council. Resolution to take sanctions off Cuba, but most importantly, to take Cuba off the terrorist list. That's more vicious than the sanctions. And so, Yuri and I were walking out of the City Council, and he said, "Oh, Molly, what's the problem?" You know, Jabbar, you know the City Council. So what's the problem? I said, well, we just haven't tried hard enough to get the City Council Speaker to make this happen. And I said, but I understand the mission. And you know, one of the things about our Cuban comrades, and we share being trained by someone no longer with us, but who trained, where's Roger Ware, who trained this man right here, Miguel Alfonso. Yeah. You know, Miguel Alfonso. He trained us in Geneva in the Human Rights Commission. He was an expert and a teacher, you know. We always told him he smoked too many cigarettes, but expert. But what happened was, you know, the Cubans stay on point, and their point was they needed this resolution from New York City Council. And so, you know, we really went to work much harder. And the people who I named, you know, it's not one person or one thing that happens. It all comes together. And so last June of last year, the New York City Council passed unanimously the resolution condemning the sanctions against Cuba, and most importantly, to take Cuba off the terrorist list. And if you were in the chambers of the City Council, let me tell you how some of the council members do. They don't say anything in the council. So most of the council, I think it was 3 people who didn't vote for it, but they didn't say it in the room. When they asked for the vote, it was like, that's how it went down. Then later on, they sneak to the table and say, I didn't want to do that, you know. But anyway, when Colette started shaking her head like that, that means it's time, you know, it's time for me to stop talking. But no, but it was an honor to win. It was an honor to win that fight because it's part of one of the pieces of the battle to do that. And one of the things I've learned from my Cuban comrades, when I was in Cuba, I met a young man. He was maybe 20 years old. He had been in Angola. He was a doctor. He had already been practicing medicine in Angola 3 years. And he was 21 years old. And he says, when you focus and you're on a mission, you can accomplish so much. And we see that with our children too. That once we get their attention, they can learn so much and be about so much. And so the Cubans have always been about that. You know, it was an honor to meet President Fidel Castro. I can't tell you, we sat down, I mean, I can't tell you, he sat down and went over the whole battle of Cuita Carnival in detail, you know, and the Cubans cast so much in terms of the importance of that. People have seen films with the body bags coming back from Angola, but they understood what solidarity was. And so we'll be forever grateful. Asada Shakur has lived out her life, not in prison, but in free Cuba. Yeah. That's all I need to say about that. Okay. And so, and you know, so let me tell you about this comic. Stand, come on, Jabari. Yeah, Jabari. This is Jabari Bridgewater. He's a New York State Senator for our district here. And you know, Jabari don't take no mess. You know, that's what I like about Jabari. He don't take no mess. They were trying to organize against him, and they had a rally. Jabari was standing right in the rally like this. They were talking about him bad and stuff, trying to organize and stuff. And Jabari sat there to the point of where they said, "Oh, Jabari, do you want to say anything?" But Jabari Bridgeport is a breath of fresh air in our community. Most of the gentrification and ethnic cleansing that you see going on in the community are products of our previous elected officials. And so fortunately we have some new ones in that understand what it's about. So let me just introduce Jabari Bridgeport to say a few words to our community.
Thank you. It really will be a few words. I'm just, always so honored to be in community with the December 12th movement, and I see our friends from the Cuban mission over there who had the honor of hosting in the New York State Senate up in Albany. We get to get special allowance for them to get as far as Albany, but we had a chance to meet with them and have them meet some other legislators, all with the collective goal of getting the sanctions removed and also getting them off the state terrorist lists. We drafted a sign-on letter. We got a bunch of legislators. We're looking to organize more to keep pushing for this. It is, a long-term battle, but we stand there in solidarity, and that video was really just enlightening. That was so cool. Imagine just being in the room with Castro and Shakur. I'm jealous of you, Omowale. And thanks again for putting this on, and I'm looking forward to just hearing more and soaking up more, because this is just really a great room with great people. Thank you so much.
Sister Khadija, which is an easy name for me to remember.
Always wanted to get to me. So I'm very happy that you guys could come again and soak up that amazing knowledge to see Sister Asada. She just looks so beautiful. She just looked like light. She just looked like breath and sustenance. And I'm just almost kind of tearing up actually watching her. And so right now, we're gonna have a few words from Ambassador Yuri, and then we might take some questions from the audience. And so sit tight, and we're gonna hear Yuri speak.
Once again, Ambassador Yuri.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon to you all. Buenas tardes. Well, allow me to say some comments, some remarks. You know that Cubans, we don't speak briefly, so bear with me. It is my distinct honor and pleasure to be here at the New Canaan Baptist Church to attend this very special evening of commemoration organized by the New York, New Jersey Cuba Sea Coalition in coordination with December 12th, Venceremos Brigades, and other friends. Let me acknowledge the presence of some of my colleagues at the mission, namely Ivan, who's present there, director. Would you stand, please? And I also want to acknowledge, as Omowale did, the presence of U.S. Senator Jabari Bridgeport. Let me also say that I'm very, very happy to what Omowale explained about the passing of the resolution at the New York City Council last year. I really want to reiterate our deep appreciation to those who made it possible, because it wasn't an effort of a single year, but rather a long, long battle to get that resolution passed. And I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to Omowale December 12th, Coalition Cuba Sea, yes, Cuba C, and some other people who are not perhaps present here, but who contributed fondly to that. Roger from December 12th, who was also at the forefront of that battle. And yes, it was done, it was achieved, and that was one of the resolutions, perhaps in recent times, that had a tremendous symbolic, I would say, a symbolic importance. Why? Because yes, some other city councils all across the United States have also passed resolutions similar to that one. But the New York City Council has an additional symbolism, because by doing that, the New York City Council has actually joined the United Nations General Assembly's efforts to also denounce for more than 30 years the embargo on Cuba. And I think that last year was precisely the year in which we also achieved 187 votes in favor of that resolution. So it was a matter of consistency that the New York City Council passed that resolution, because this city is the venue of the United Nations headquarters. So it's only a matter of consistency of what the international community has been doing for the last 30 years or so, passing resolutions year after year denouncing the US blockade on Cuba. So thank you for that, and I look forward to continue providing information about the impact of the US blockade on Cuba. On behalf of the Cuban mission to the United Nations, I would like to thank the organizers of this event, and especially to the church and Deacon Brown for hosting this event as well. I had the pleasure of meeting him just briefly, and I hope that this event won't be the last one, but only the beginning of a series of events in solidarity with Cuba. And I'm also honored to convey warm greetings and our deep appreciation to you all for your traditional and long-standing friendship and solidarity with Cuba for so many years, because this struggle against the US blockade has lasted 6 decades so far. Too long. But we're here. Dear friends, July 26th is a very symbolic day for Cubans, we Cubans, and also for the friends of the Cuban Revolution. Yesterday, in Cuba, in the province of Santo Espiritus, we had the main event to mark the 71st anniversary of the assault on the Moncada and Carlos Manuel de Céspedes barracks. The event was presided over by Raúl Castro and by the President of Cuba, Miguel Díaz-Canel. And on behalf of the Cuban population, more than 5,000 people also showed at that event. Also present, more than 100 friends from different groups of solidarity with Cuba from more than 20 countries also attended that event. And the keynote speaker was the Vice President of Cuba, Salvador Valdés Mesa. The assault on the Moncada barracks, which at the time was the second military fortress of the Batista dictatorship, was an action with which the centennial generation would start the small engine that started the big engine of the revolution until today, as Fidel has said many times. July 26, 1953 marked a turning point in the Cuban historical evolution, and it marked the course we have followed up until present times. It coined truth of permanent value to the Cuban society, established ethical principles for all times, and defined the attitude to be maintained by the Cuban people in the face of dangers, challenges, and difficulties, no matter how insurmountable they may seem. The Moncada is the resumption of the revolution so many times frustrated since 1868 by the breakdown of unity and or foreign interference. The young men who in Santiago de Cuba or in Llano on July 26 threw themselves into combat without fear, neither of bullets nor of repression, nor of death. They gave their lives in the first place for Martí's ideal of conquering all justice. And here we are, 71 years later. We Cubans are still there resisting, because the Cuban Revolution has continued its victorious march without giving in or surrendering. And we are also building a society that seeks to provide for the welfare of its people, but has had to face big external challenges such as the unjust blockade. Today, we can reaffirm that no matter how difficult the circumstances, no matter how great the challenges, our people will always defend their socialist revolution. History has shown that yes, we could, yes, we can, and we always will, as Raúl has said also many times. The assault on the Moncada can be said that it was the first assault on one of the many fortresses that were to be taken later, said Fidel at some point. There were the many Moncada to be taken, he said. There remain, among other things, the Moncada of illiteracy, and our people did not hesitate to attack that fortress too. They attacked it and took it. The Moncada of ignorance, the Moncada of inexperience, the Moncada of underdevelopment, the Moncada of the lack of technicians, of the lack of resources in all areas. And our people have not hesitated to also undertake the assault on those fortresses. Friends all, since 2017, the Cuban people have endured an unparalleled and excessive tightening of the US blockade. During the Trump administration, more than 240 unilateral coercive measures were adopted against the Cuban people as part of the policy of maximum pressure, with the ruthless objective of suffocating sensitive sectors of the Cuban economy. The maximum pressure policy remains in force until today and in full practical application. One of the set unilateral measures is the unjust and arbitrary inclusion of Cuba in the so-called list of state sponsors of terrorism. Just to give you additional information on that topic, I want to recall that on May of this year, the US Secretary of State submitted to the US Congress one more of the reports that normally describe countries without any international mandate or recognition. This time, they listed 4 countries who allegedly do not fully cooperate with the United States anti-terrorist efforts for the year 2023. As opposed to what has happened in recent years, the list does not include Cuba among such countries. Nonetheless, the State Department keeps Cuba, which is a contradiction, as one of the states in a list of those allegedly sponsoring terrorism. So it's nothing but a total unilateral and unfunded list, whose purpose is to serve as a pretext for imposing coercive economic sanctions on those countries. The demand for the US government to amend social injustice continues to be firmly and repeatedly made not only by the Cuban people and many governments, especially in Latin America and in the Caribbean, but also by political, social, and religious organizations throughout the United States and by several US politicians as well. Also by traditional groups at the United Nations, such as the Non-Aligned Movement and the G77 and China, just to give you some examples. But the clear and absolute truth is that Cuba does not sponsor terrorism. On the contrary, Cuba has been a victim of terrorist actions.
Right.
Many of them organized, perpetrated from the US territory. This issue can be confirmed by anyone interested in the topic and is very well known by the government of the United States, its State Department, and its law enforcement agencies. They are also fully aware of how significantly harmful are for the Cuban economy the sanctions, actions, and the intimidating effect that automatically have on any state having it included in socialism, regardless of what the truth might be. So it's not enough to acknowledge, as they did recently in May, that Cuba fully cooperates with the US when it comes to anti-terrorist efforts. Cuba does so with the entire international community as well, and with the United Nations system as well, because we have a principled position when it comes to that topic. That is widely known, a widely known fact, and public opinion is not to be misled about it. The President of the United States has all the privileges to act honestly and to do what is right, to do the right thing, which is to exclude Cuba from that arbitrary list. Dear friends, the policy of permanent hostility and blockade of the United States is, without any doubt, the main cause of the difficulties of our country. You have no doubt about it. That's the reality, and the figures speak for themselves. Yesterday, I was sharing some statistics in a similar event such as this one, and I can repeat briefly some of them. See, in a period of a year, the impact to the economy of Cuba of the blockade, just in a single year, amounted to close to $5 billion US. $5 billion US. Now, perhaps that's not a huge amount for the economy of the United States, for the economy of the European Union, but for a small island in the Caribbean, subject to a 60 years old embargo, that's a huge amount of financing. $5 billion US. Now, what $5 billion means, basically, to the daily situation of Cubans? Well, $5 billion means more than 400 million per month of damages, or 13 million per day, or $500,000 per hour. So by the time we end this important event, the Cuban economy may have suffered close to 2 million in damages, just to give you data. So what would Cuba be like today if we had those resources? Because we just spoke about a year of damages, but when you add the 60 years of damages, the cumulative effect of that embargo or blockade, as we call it, amount to $160 billion US in 60 decades. $160 billion US dollars. So the blockade is not only a challenge to ethics and humanism, it is in fact a violation of the purposes and principles of the Charter of the United Nations and international law. The blockade is indeed a massive, flagrant and systematic violation of the human rights of all the people of Cuba. For 31 years, the UN General Assembly in Manhattan has adopted the traditional resolution calling for the lifting of the US blockade on Cuba. As I said last year, 187 countries voted in favor of that resolution. So, 187 countries cannot be wrong. Who are wrong on that issue is not precisely Cuba or the international community. So it's clear that the US government is totally isolated, and they are on the wrong side of history. So we hope that at some point, someday, because of the fight, because of the efforts of the international community and many friends of Cuba, they came to the realization that that unjust policy has to be amended and changed. It is time to do the right thing by removing not only the blockade, that is an obstacle for our two countries to have a mutually beneficial relationship based on respect, based on the respect of the respective values, societies, systems. Friends, it has to also be said that in that battle, Cuba is not alone. It has never been alone, and Cuba is still the possibility that the world has to prove that there is room for all ideas and political systems, so that democracy, as proclaimed, is recognized in all its diversity. The Cuban nation has demonstrated and will continue to demonstrate its will to resist and move forward in the face of obstacles. The successful battle waged by Cuba against COVID-19 is a clear example of that. Cuba, not a rich country in terms of material resources, was able to develop and produce 3 homegrown vaccines against COVID-19.
Yeah.
And this is the result precisely of the Cuban Revolution that invested heavily in education from the very beginning. That battle against the Moncada of illiteracy, as Fidel said, well, that's the result of that. That was able to produce thousands of people who actually were able to join the scientific in a very effective manner against that terrible pandemic that was COVID-19. More than 90% of the Cuban population was fully vaccinated with those vaccines. So we are very proud of that scientific community. And that shows the resilient nature of the Cuban nation, the Cuban population. But our efforts were not limited and are not still limited to our borders. We also made our humble contribution to other countries in a manner consistent with our internationalist vocation. Let me share some example of that. During the 6 decades of the Cuban Revolution or so, 600,000 Cuban health professionals have rendered collaboration services in 165 countries. And more recently, during COVID-19 pandemic, more than 3,000 members of the health contingent Henry Reed provided services in 40 of those countries.
Wow.
40 countries. Some 27,000 young people from 100 nations have graduated in Cuba from the Latin American School of Medical Sciences, including young people from the United States. More than 4 million low-income people in our region, Latin America, and also in Africa, have recovered their sight with the Operation Miracle, a collaboration project put forward by Cuba together with a number of countries, whereby Cuba provided the health physicians, the surgeons, and the people who were able to put that in motion. So as a result of that, 4 million low-income people have recovered their sight against illnesses such as cataracts, pterygium, diabetic retinopathy, and those illnesses that affect especially vulnerable populations all over the world.
Right, yeah.
I personally have that. I witnessed, while I was ambassador of Cuba to Jamaica, I was a witness of that specific collaboration. When in Kingston, we set up an eye care center together with the government of Jamaica, and throughout those years, hundreds of people from Jamaica got their eyesight restored. And I was very proud of our people working there. And let me end those examples by just recalling something that I am also very proud of, which can be in a very brief manner conveyed, which is very simple. When Africa called, Cuba answered. When Africa called, Cuba answered. Yes, and as somebody mentioned, yes, hundreds of thousands of people from Cuba went to Africa to fight with our brothers and sisters from Africa in their independence efforts, or to preserve the independence achieved at the time. Yes, more than 300,000 people from Cuba went to Africa, thousands of kilometers away from Cuba, and we were able to join our sisters and brothers from Africa in those efforts. And today, we are very proud of what was achieved by those nations, specifically in South Africa, Namibia, Angola, and some other countries as well. And we came back to Cuba with the pride of serving to those countries. We don't own a mining operation in Africa. We are not owners of any property in Africa. The only thing that we got was the satisfaction of giving back to Mother Africa, of giving back to our brothers and sisters. This is also what the Cuban Revolution meant, not only for Cubans, but for many people all over the world. The permanent will to practice solidarity and share what we have. Because we're convinced, dear friends, that not bombs, but cooperation is what the people need. Not sanctions. That's something that we have to try to avert, to avoid, or to put an end to. We are very convinced that solidarity, genuine solidarity and cooperation is what this world needs. We'll continue to strive for a better world, and we will continue doing so. Because for us, it's not about giving others what we have to spare, but to modestly sharing the very little resources that we have. That's what Cuba means. That's what the Cuban Revolution means. Rest assured that Cuba will continue to fight tirelessly against the blockade and the hostility coming from abroad, and that our revolution will never be surrendered. We cannot. 26th of July is a living example of the resiliency of the Cuban people, of the commitment of the Cuban people, of the commitment of our nation, of what our social fabric is all about. So we, the younger generations, have to continue that fight, have to continue standing tall in respect to our ancestors and those who made the revolution possible. So rest assured that we will continue that fight, because we are on the right side of history. We're doing the right thing. So allow me to conclude by reaffirming what was expressed precisely yesterday by the Vice President of Cuba, Comrade Salvador Valdez Mesa, who said, and I quote, "We are not sitting around just waiting for the blockade to be lifted, or for us to be removed from the list of alleged sponsors of terrorism, which causes so much harm by constantly inhibiting access to credit and foreign financing, discouraging potential foreign investors, and hindering the arrival of necessary equipment and technologies, among other impacts. We have reached to this point," said Comrade Salvador Valdez Mesa, "and we will continue to be standing and resisting, thanks to the exemplary capacity for resistance, the knowledge acquired as a result of the revolutionary work, and especially to the unwavering determination of Cubans to fight and win." End of quote. Viva el 26 de julio. Viva. Long live 26th of July. Viva. Long live the solidarity movement with Cuba in the United States. Viva. Venceremos. Gracias. Please join me in expressing Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Cuba sí, bloqueo no. Let Cuba live. Let Cuba live. Let Cuba live. Thank you so much, dear friends.
Long live the Cuban Revolution! Long live the Cuban Revolution! And as we say, in support of Cuba and international solidarity, there are ongoing campaigns which we are continuing to struggle to show our support for the revolution of Cuba, for the sacrifice that they have fought for the sacrifice that their people have endured, and that we say, when Cuba calls, who will answer? When Cuba calls, who will answer? We will! We're going to bring up Sister Erin to give you some information about an ongoing campaign that needs material support right here, right now. Sister Erin.
I think everybody knows the situation. I think the thing I want to stress most, and our brother had done it several weeks ago very well, Christian, at the last event that was at the Sisters' Place. We have a pacemaker campaign which is going on right now through Bob Schwartz and Global Health Partners. But the main thing we're really trying to do is we're trying to spread the word about the SSOT and the harm that it's doing. Because this isn't a campaign for donations. It's not like we're giving money because they need money because they're inept and they can't do what they're supposed to do. They can't do what they need to do, and their system is being strangled. And a world-class health system is being crushed because of the U.S. policies. And the U.S. policies have got to end. So although we're raising money and we're making people's lives, we're giving life to Cubans with this campaign. We really have to remember that this is really about getting Cuba off the list We have to like do this so that people are aware and we educate. As Colette knows, it's about educating people about the harm that the U.S. policy is doing. I remember Brother Yuri back when the pandemic was happening and they were making those, they were doing the work on the vaccines. I remember when they put them on the SSOT list, and suddenly Germany, who was giving them the raw materials that they needed for Soberana, they couldn't get them anymore. And they had to switch and they had to go to a Gala. And and they had another choice. But this is how big it is. They can't get raw materials. So suddenly a system which made 80% of their own medicine has bare shelves. They can't get anything. They can't get the food that they need. They can't get anything with 10% of a product. So people are dying. And this isn't because of Cuba, because Cuba has endured this damn blockade for 60-something years. But with this SSOT on top of it, which has destroyed all of the financial communication and abilities throughout the world, they really designed this to crush them. So this campaign, beside the main point, educate. Please educate people on the SSOT. Raise your voice. Do what Colette's doing. Organize. The brochures, we're doing this campaign for one more month till the end of August, but already there's another shipment going in August 1st. It's going to land there. We've got, I think, 200 and something in. Get this brochure. It tells you all of the most recent information. The pacemakers, dual and single chambers, are in hearts now. People are living. They wouldn't have lived. They were in hospital rooms because of this. So it's one more month. Whatever you can do, one last push, whatever anyone can do, please go on Global Health Partners, GH Partners, right? ghpartners.org. Right now. And you can scan it, or you can just go on there and they'll take anything. I mean, anything you can give. Ask your friends, again, if you got, $5, $10, whatever. Anything will help, because we're only doing this for one more month. The end of August and it ends, so whatever you can do, do it. But remember, don't stop the organizing. Don't stop the mobilizing. Make sure that you tell everybody why this is necessary. This isn't charity. This is what we owe. We owe it because this government, where we happen to live, unfortunately, sometimes I don't know, is doing this. And we have to be the voice that makes the change. Because somebody has to make the change, and it's only going to be us and our voices and who we reach out to and the people that we get to reach out. So keep the voice, educate, activate, mobilize, organize, and let's get them off of the SSOT list. Simple snip, pen, signature of a pen, and then let's end the blockade.
Right.
Thank you.